Hello, everyone. I'm Trevor Arnett, Communications Associate at the Global Early Adolescent Study with Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. We're excited to welcome you to today's event titled Education During and Post-COVID-19. This event is presented by Girls for Development Goals Foundation in partnership with the Global Early Adolescent Study. In today's event, we'll be doing a couple of things. One, we'll be spotlighting the work that the Girls for Development Goals Foundation is doing for young women in Nigeria. Two, we will discuss the impact of COVID-19 on education for adolescents and youth. Three, we will try to talk through UNESCO budget recommendations for education and the UN's role in ensuring access to quality education. And lastly, discuss the educational system in Delta State, Nigeria. And we are joined today by some very great and prominent speakers. But before we get into today's conversation, let me just give a very quick background on the Global Early Adolescent Study. So the GEAS, or the Global Early Adolescent Study, is a longitudinal research study that explores factors that either impede or promote healthy development across adolescence, as well as impact gender interventions. This global comparison offers a unique opportunity to inform policymakers, health providers, families, and young people themselves about gender and equality formation in adolescence. The GEAS, the Global Early Adolescent Study, engages adolescents and young people ages 10 to 14 and older, bringing them the much needed attention on this vulnerable population. In essence, the Global Early Adolescent Study seeks to better understand how gender socialization in early adolescence happens around the world and how it shapes health and wellness for young people in their communities. So yeah, going into today's event, we'll start with Benedicta, who is the leader and founder of Girls for Global Development Goals Foundation, and we'll talk a little bit about her work. And then we'll later speak with Bar about education in Delta State. So Benny, thank you for joining us today. I just have a few questions. One, can you just tell us a bit about Girls for Development Goals Foundation and some of the work that it's doing?
Okay, thank you so much, Trev. I'm really excited that we finally have the program running. So Girls for Development Goals Foundation started about almost 5 years ago. It started out of the passion to impact young girls in my community. And we started way back from Obiaruku, Delta State. As a then, we were operating with the name Girls Health and Education Foundation until 2019, where we officially got registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission of Nigeria with the name Girls for Development Goals Foundation. So basically, our works are around sexual reproductive health and rights, which covers for teenage pregnancy, menstrual hygiene. We are concerned about education, youth development, and capacity development. We have had projects around advocacy against teenage pregnancy in Obiaruku, engaging secondary school students from Obiaruku, Abraka, Obinamba, and neighboring communities. We have had we have empowered girls with menstrual hygiene projects, and so many other works. Recently, our project, which is actually just winding off, was in partnership with Organic Up from Denmark. They distributed through us, through our organization, over 200 menstrual cups for free to young women and girls, not this time, not only in Delta State, but across 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria: Delta, Lagos, Enugu, Abuja, Kebbi, and Adamawa. So we are very careful to ensure that we engage community leaders, religious leaders during our projects, because these are the people who have the most influence over people, not just the children or the young girls we're trying to reach out to, but their guardians. So it's really been amazing, and we're looking forward to many more years of impact.
Wow, that's a lot. Really, really wonderful and amazing community work that you're doing. So that brings me to my next question. You're doing a lot of great and impactful work, and we're here having this session today. Can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to be a part of this event today, and talk about the work that's happening in Nigeria?
Okay, sure. One of our focal or thematic areas is on education. Like you already know, we focus on young girls, majorly young girls in school, secondary schools, what you call high school. And we have noticed that not just in Nigeria, but globally, COVID-19 has impacted greatly on education. So on the International Day of Education, the Delta State Youth Parliament invited me, as one of their speakers, and not only just to speak on the theme for this year, but it also made me realize, like that there's so much work that needs to be done around education if we have to survive, not just during the pandemic, but post-pandemic. I'm sure nobody ever envisaged, that a time will come where the whole world will just almost literally shut down. Education, every aspect of every sector of the economy affected. So now we need to become more proactive, And I felt, well, since we're an organization, we can't say what can we do. Engaging in conversation or stirring up conversations like this can go a long way, even way more than we anticipate. And that is why I'm really excited that we have the Director General of the Bureau of Statistics from my state. So these are conversations that by the time we keep it going, get engage government officials or policy makers. These are people that can actually translate our messages or relay our messages to the proper or the right authorities, and then results can begin. I believe that change is like a ripple effect. So if something good starts here, the government of the neighboring states can say, oh, something great is going on here. Why don't we copy this? And that's how it is. So that's actually why I'm really concerned about, the program for today.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and we certainly look forward to the conversation a bit later with Bar, such a prominent and important figure in education in Delta State. Just two more questions, Benny, before we turn it over to you in Bar's discussion. One, which of your projects are you most passionate about? You mentioned many things that you've done over the years and even a recent project, but which is the most passionate for you?
Okay, I don't mean to be gender biased right now, but I'm really passionate about the menstruation project. Probably because I have more sisters than brothers. And another reason could be that I attended an all-girls boarding school. So, it just means that everyone around me was menstruating. It was a topic that you could not, avoid. Like anyway, you're going to class, you could actually walk into a used pad or step on one without even knowing. So it made me so concerned, especially with the problem of dysmenorrhea, which is painful menstruation girls having to miss classes. And even I wasn't left out. When I was in my period, especially the first few days, I could barely stay in class. So it was a conversation I was willing to have. So by the time I left secondary school and then went on to the university, I continued to research, to ask questions. In fact, I remember in my what we call senior secondary school two, I walked up to my or yeah, SS1. I walked up to my biology teacher to ask her, ma'am, why do you always tell us not to take sweet things or sugary things when we're on our periods? The wonderful thing is that she was honest enough. She didn't know. So that was where my enthusiasm started. Yes, I started studying, reading, and then see where all that passion ended up. Now I want girls to not just only be able to take care of themselves when they're on their periods, but also to have access to sustainable, eco-friendly, and cost-effective menstrual products. So that's my most that's one of the projects that's like most dear to my heart.
Completely, I completely understand, and that makes sense. Yeah, and I think a big part of this work is, a lot of people think that it's us informing young people only, but actually we're also informing adults. It's not just young people that may not be where they need to be in terms of education around women's issues. And so that's the important piece with this work. And to my last question, you mentioned all these projects that you've worked on. You mentioned your passion projects, but in terms of collaborations and things you want to do moving forward, what are some of the organizations that you would love to work with? And what would be some of the projects that you would like to collaborate on if you could work with these organizations?
Okay. I would definitely want to work with UNFP because I know that they are a lot more concerned about around sexual reproductive health and right. I wouldn't mind because I have a background in pharmacy. I'm a pharmacist, by training, and I believe these are the organizations that are, well, I say most influential in that field. And not just that, we can't deny the fact that these projects require money. They require funds. It's an area that not just only I believe every other nonprofit struggles with this, especially at the, well, I say early stages of growth, where one hasn't had any access to grants or external funders. So I'll be willing. I'm actually very open to work with the likes of the WHO, UNFP, Society for Family Health, that is in Nigeria, FHI 360, as many organizations that are interested in sexual reproductive health and rights, from teenage pregnancies to menstrual hygiene. Our arms are fully open, and ready to collaborate and ready to work. So we're actually
Sounds
looking
sounds
forward to such collaborations.
sounds good. Yeah, and certainly, myself and my organization, we can try to help facilitate some of those partnerships. So looking forward to doing that. And a lot of the work that we do is also in partnership with WHO. So there might be some potential collaboration there. So thank you, Benny.
Fingers crossed.
Really
looking
good.
Forward to that.
Really good discussion about your organization. And now I'll actually turn it over to you for a discussion with Bar. And please give him the proper and due introduction that he deserves. I'm basically just
the Delta
using
way.
Yeah. I'm just using first names because there may be some pronunciation problems, and I don't want to say anyone's name incorrectly, but I'm sure you
by
can.
Bar, actually, it's barrister. I hope you know.
Okay. Thank you. See, thank you for letting me know that. So yeah, I'll turn it over to you and Bar, and I'll be following along the discussion, and maybe I'll give some input and questions further into the discussion. So thank you.
Okay. So I have the singular honor to introduce the Director General of the Delta State Bureau of Statistics in the person of Barrister E.A. Uzum. Thank you so much, sir. Before I let you speak, I just want to really appreciate you, for taking time off your busy schedule. Ever since I reached out, even before I knew that you were the Director General, I always bumped into him in conferences and events, always doing one thing or the other, speaking. So when eventually I made my inquiries and realized he was the Director General from the Bureau of Orientation, sorry, I was really excited because I could see all of the work he was doing. And like a few days ago, I was interacting with him that there is something I really admire about his job, which is the ability for him to be an all-rounder. Like if you were in that bureau of orientation, irrespective of your background, like I said, he's a barrister, you have to be able to orient not just people around you, but the whole state, depending on the target population, for that information to relay information to them, to orient them or why this should be done or that should not be done. So whether you like it or not, that sort of makes you an all-rounder. So if you're talking, I've seen him do advocacy programs around drug abuse, moving around secondary schools, like in all 20. Delta State is quite a large state. We have about 25 ethnic groups, local government areas, sorry. And having to move around all that, doing orientation, speaks volume of his passion. And then recently, he shared with me a flyer that he was going to be speaking on something around the drainage system, especially now that the rain is coming in our state capital, Asaba, which is also where I live. And I was really excited because this makes you learn and just learn and learn. So thank you so much, sir. It's really an honor to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, sir. So please go on. Feel free to share with us.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I want to appreciate the organizers of this program. I want to appreciate the partnership that I see here. Frankly speaking, it's quite interesting, and I'm very excited to be here to share, to learn as well, and most importantly, have the synergy that is needed to move immediate environment forward. I must say that in sub-Saharan Africa, there are lots of challenges and quite striking. From my experience in office, I think the biggest challenge we're having in this climb is orientation. I narrowed down to orientation because in the course of my work, I've been able to make a lot of analysis, come up with a lot of theories that I think would be of general application if we are really to take the bull by the horn, which I think this particular NGO, our organizers, is partnering to do. Now, before we narrow down to the issue, and because I would like us to stay with the topic, I want to permit me to formally introduce myself again. I know you've done before, but I need us all to be on the same page adequately and sufficiently. I am Barrister Uzum Azuka. I'm the Director General, State Orientation Bureau. And our mandate is basically marketing of government policies, giving direction to the policies of government and the mindset of the people, giving orienting and reorienting our people on the policies of government, better attitude to life, and most importantly, curbing social vices to create a better environment, to create a better enabling environment for the government and the government to be on the same page. In the course of speaking, Ms. Apuamah talked about the girl child. The Delta State government is very particular about the girl child. Because here in Nigeria, we believe that if you train the girl child, you build the nation already. And she talked about sanitation, internal sanitation of the girl child, especially the younger generation. Now, I started by saying that the challenge we have generally is orientation. You agree with me that corruption is orientation. Disoriented persons are corrupt. So when you see a British Metropolitan Police officer saying, no, I'm not going to take bribe, I'm not going to be corrupt, because he or she understands that when you take bribe or you corrupt, you pull down the healthcare system in the country, you pull down the pension system in the country, you pull down the educational system in the country, you compromise the institution of government. And that also boomerangs and comes back to you. But when you are one is disoriented and believes that involving in corruption is your part, is your way of taking back the national cake, what they call the national cake, is your way of taking what belongs to you in the Nigerian project. When people indulge in corruption, believing it's a way of life, it's the way to make money, it's an orientational challenge. For example, the COVID-19 experience, for me, it's a medical tragedy, and at the same time, more of an orientation issue, because we had the COVID protocol, and people are saying, no, we're not going to do that. It's the orientation that they have. We needed to drive in the orientation of the COVID protocol, and when you get that right, to a large extent, you solve the problem reasonably, because the West, America, China, Italy, Switzerland, and many countries caved in with the COVID-19, with the advent. But for those that were able to keep the protocol, for those that were able to observe the protocol through needed orientation, they were able to at least manage the situation better. So it wasn't more of a medical challenge. Fortunately, we have the research, and then we have the vaccines now. Now, the sanitary issues of the girl child is orientation. When parents sit back and teach their children what to do, when and how. When institutions of government take responsibility, especially teachers, to give the needed orientation on how to manage the early times of menstrual issues, it's orientation. Cultism is orientation. Examination malpractice is orientation. Values is orientation. Child abuse is orientation. Child rights is an orientational issue. Migration, immigration, illegal migration is an orientational issue. So I want to commend Mrs. Apuamah for the initiative. And most importantly, she started from the rural axis where it's really happening. The NGO started touching lives from persons who ordinarily cannot pay back. I know the terrains of Obiaruku and its environs, Ebede, Umuaja, and the other towns, including Abraka, where they started from before registration and after registration, and now moving into the global scene. So I want to say it's highly, highly commendable. And on the part of government, we're ready to partner reasonably with civil society organizations that are serious about leaping with the new trend, considering the needs assessment of our people, and most importantly, having that face of humanity and impactation with the general populace. So coming down to what we're going to do today, I want us to stay with the issue, narrow down to specifics, so that the impact will be maximal, and then we'll be able to, maximize this golden opportunity in impacting into lives, and at the same time, retooling ourselves for the challenges of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Trev, I bet you can tell the richness of our resource person and all the information that he's sharing. I appreciate the fact that he shares from a place of experience, not just about theories read up from books, but actually from experience and actually, the actual field work. So, sir, I would like to ask, what projects have your bureau engaged in around the subject of education? If you can share briefly with us, and then how has COVID-19 impacted on these projects?
Okay, fantastic. Education. When we say education in this climate, we have formal and informal education. Informal education are those we start from our parents, people around us, without going to the four walls of the school. And it's very, very critical because that's the first point of education before you go to the nursery, primary, secondary, tertiary institution. Now, let us look at life, schooling in the tertiary, the primary, secondary, and tertiary institution. One of the biggest challenges you have is destruction of government properties, destruction of these schools by a certain class of persons who don't in society. So firstly, we took education to the traditional institutions, to the youth groups, through the civil societies, the president generals of communities to own the school projects. Because where we don't have an enabling environment for education, education cannot thrive. Government has built institutions of learning, but those institutions are not being properly handled by critical stakeholders. So the first thing we did was to take education, to take sensitization to those axes that school properties in terms of the buildings, the labs, and other facilities within the school is for the general upliftment of the society. Another challenge being faced by school is examination malpractice. Examination malpractice is working hand in hand with courtism. Examination malpractice reduces the potency and quality of graduates from institution. It destabilizes the educational system and creates chaos within the institution, thereby reducing the quality of graduates to be thrown off by that institution. Examination malpractice is there. Courtism is dealt itself. Courtism is a phenomenon. It's where students within and outside the school come together at nocturnal times, most times, and come together, form groups, and they use it in terms of oppression among themselves. It grows into drug abuse. It stems also from this examination malpractice and all social vices around it. And this comes from what we call peer influence mostly. Peer influence mostly. And when those peer influence comes in, it leads to a lot of social vices, such as even killings. That a lot of deaths can be traced to court-related issues and drug abuse. So the State Orientation Bureau has been able to go into the schools to teach the students on the dangers of courtism, the dangers of drug abuse, the dangers of examination malpractice. How did we do this? We employed the stick and carrot system by talking to the students, because anything gained by force is half gained, but anything gained through a negotiation is fully gained. We negotiated with them, and in the course of negotiation, we were able to show them or teach them, tell them, persuade them to understand that courtism is not the way to go. Examination malpractice is not the way to go, and that drug abuse destroys their future. And so there were lots of renunciation. People were now renouncing. We had to set up a telephone line for students to reach the bureau. We were also able to set up in some schools clubs, social clubs, to distract the students from courtism. We did that in collaboration with the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education. But I can tell you, a lot more needs to be done. And that's where the civil society organizations, that's where religious groups, that's where other organizations, including the religious, have to come in. But most importantly, well-tooled CSOs, civil society organizations, with basic understanding of civic duties and responsibilities, like the one we have, the organizers of this program. That's where we call them out to take the bull by the horn and set the agenda. Having done that, we also realize that in our climb, where we have students who are discerning, who understand the rule of law, who understands their place in the society, they can as well be teachers to their own parents. And that's where we come in the COVID protocol. Most parents are either in the market, their workplace, some in the farm, in the rural areas. They also need to be taught by their children. And that's where we're talking about the COVID. If the child understands the protocol of COVID and teaches the parents will learn a lot faster. So we're able to go and do sensitization with the State Primary Healthcare Development Agency to these schools. And we also know that children between the ages of 10, 12, 14 to 18, 35 play a lot of roles. They are very significant in family issues because of the emotions attached between parents and children at that level. So during the COVID sensitization, we went across board, went to schools, marketplaces, hospitals, churches, etc., to give this sensitization. Now, where do the children of these categories learn? It's not just the school, it's not just the institution. Southern Nigeria, Delta State, Obiaruku, and its environment are more of Christian societies. There is no family without a Christian, so they go to church. Church is another place for teaching. Church is another place where people come with the mindset that they want to learn. Church is another place where people come humble. They come with supplication to God. And so if we can retweak it and rejig it and encourage pastors from disease from preaching prosperity to preach values, to preach objectivity, to make dispassionate appraisal of what the situation is, we're able to invoke that knowledge. We're able to invoke that model, to teach in churches. Having taught in churches, we also put together youth groups. The State Orientation Bureau put together youth groups. We're able to stratify it between the ages of 10, 12, and 18, and then between the ages of 18 and 35 through the community youth development programs of the state. We also partner with the Ministry of Youth Development. But again, a lot more needs to be done. We just finished a program on sensitization against drug abuse, cultism in the secondary schools. And in a couple of days, we'll be hitting the tertiary institutions. The Delta State has a population, a large population of the youth. And we have about 58% of Delta population as youth. And that underscores the fact that we have about 12 to 13 tertiary institutions in Delta State alone. And these youth groups are the leaders of tomorrow. And the tomorrow is here with us today. To take them away from internet fraud, to take them away from examination malpractice, to take them away from ritualism, to take them away from drug abuse, to take them away from social vices, is to prepare for a greater tomorrow. Anything short of that will be a tragedy. So that's where the State Orientation Bureau is very, very critical, because the challenge we have as a nation, as a people, as a state, as locals, is more of orientation. Now, before I grab my seat once again, can you picture a scenario where the average mindset, let's say the least mindset in terms of mentality, is got a mindset of Mrs. Benedicta here, our anchor person. So that means we're not going to have immigration or illegal migration. We're not going to have corruption. We're not going to have child abuse or drug abuse. We're not going to have cultism. We're not going to have a lot of devices, because if her mentality is the least that we have, then there may be no need for orientation building. What we have is orientation. What we have then will be orientation sustainability. Sustainability of what we already have. But unfortunately, she's one of our best. And the gap between where she is, her contemporaries, and the lower grade is very, very far. There's a big lacuna there. There's a gulf. So we've got a lot of job. We've got a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Trevor, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
One thing I like about the mix, of the speakers that we have is you are speaking from America, but and Hilary, who's yet to join us, has worked with the UNESCO with varying opportunities. Although he's Cameroonian, by birth and by citizenship. The thing is, having someone from my state of origin, from Nigeria, not just Nigeria, but from a place where my organization has actually done a lot of work, it sort of drives the point home more. So it's easy to say at the UN level that ensure was SDG 4 quality education. So quality education for us, you can see the many challenges we have in this state. It goes beyond just saying, oh, what's the quality of teachers we have? What is the quality of facilities, the laboratories, etc. But now we have people students who need orientation. Now, if you have all of that in place and students are more concerned about abusing drugs and engaging in exam malpractice, there's no way we can have quality education. There's no way the United Nations can achieve this goal by 2030. So I'm really excited that these problems are being, highlighted by someone who is not just reading these things from the news, or hearing about it, but someone who is involved in the field. You notice that the communities where I started, you knew me when I started in Obiarako, and all. He knows these areas very well. So it's like he can relate with the challenges and with the problems that we have in such places. And that is something that I'm really, really excited about. I hope this video gets to go viral, like so many people get to hear, actually from my states, Nigeria. So a lot of people can learn, and know how to apply. Now, if we want to achieve sustainable development, especially in this decade of action, we need to do away with the one size fit all approach. We need to be able to tailor the solutions, down to the particular problems that are obtainable in the communities, the grassroots levels, etc.
Yeah, no,
So
I think all of the points that Bara spoke about, I mean, he just hit home, on all of the things that, his organization is doing and how they're addressing those things. I mean, it's phenomenal to hear all that. And this is just a very small session that we're having today. And, we'll have the video posted on our website and we'll share that through the School of Public Health. But we certainly would love to have you speak again, Bar. In a couple of months, at a larger meeting that we would love to share and promote, and have other, faculty members from the School of Public Health. I think that, I wasn't sure what you were going to share today, but it's quite impressive. And I actually wish that we would have made this session a bigger session, because more people needed to hear some of the things that you've discussed, from all of the sensitization and awareness that your organization is doing, looking at young people as teachers and leaders, and to share information in their communities. I mean, this is this community practice of young people being a knowledge hub is quite important, and sometimes is overlooked. And then I think you as a leader, strategically connecting with the different populations within your community and state, and your examples of bringing awareness and spreading information through the church. I think that these are critical things. And then just, your organization, seeing your role as, in some sense, bringing communities away from various negative behaviors. I think that that's an important, thing that people want to work towards, not just putting the information out there and then leaving, but being there sort of along the spectrum to say, this is our organization, this is what we want to present, and this is the information that we want to get across, but all there on the end to make sure that it's having an impact in the community. And so, yeah, I think that all of the stuff that you said today is quite vital and critical to the mission of education and orientation, not only in the Delta state, but I think that you know, a lot of the things that you touched on are informative for other countries and other communities around the world. So yeah, just want to repeat again, we'd love to have you for another session with us in a couple of months that we would highly and prominently promote. And yeah, back to you, Benny. I just wanted to give that comment.
That's all right. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll all be looking forward to, you know, having that this conversation in a bigger, with a bigger audience and, you know, a bigger panel. So, Barrister, back to you. I would like to know, you know, that's the wonderful thing about having this kind of conversations. Like, you not just come with your own ideologies or knowledge. We're also learning. I must confess that when we came up with the topic, even after discussing with Trevor on how we can partner, I actually was thinking more on, you know, the classroom levels, you know, how the COVID-19 has impacted on education. But now he has actually brought in our mindset to not just education, like we called it education. We didn't say formal education. So there's formal and there's informal. So there are lots of factors coming to play. So looking at especially the formal education, how do you think that we can advance, you know, education at this time where for some part of the world that's the pandemic is still ravaging and post COVID-19? Because I believe even after the pandemic, so many things are going to change, you know, about our way of life, about our education. I mean, there are a number of schools, even in Delta State here, they had no choice. They had to learn online, you know, during all through the period, taking classes on WhatsApp. Like, it's crazy. Who would have ever thought that a time will come? I mean, if you're on WhatsApp normally in class, a teacher could walk you out, and now we have to utilize the same platform, you know, just to get knowledge across. So, sir, how can education be advanced during and post COVID-19, in your opinion, and then taking Delta State as a case study?
Yeah, thank you very much. This question, I'll find a way around it. My answer is going to be like a mini sketch. Short enough to be noticed and long enough to cover the subject matter. The new normal is here with us. The new normal is here with us. You also agree with me that the new normal is hitting every society according to the level of awareness in it. So if you come to a place like Port Harcourt, Lagos, that's more urban, there's a lot going on in terms of the new COVID-19 protocol. For example, we are in a webinar, we're in a Zoom session, right? Like you said, who would have thought that this same thing will come to this level? If at the civil service level, directors are meeting in a Zoom session, the state ESCOs are taking their meetings in a Zoom session, that also tells you that platforms have been created in the universities and in the secondary schools where assignments are already done at that level. The enhancement of communication through COVID-19 cannot be overemphasized. A lot has changed in our educational system. A lot has been thrown into e-learning process. People have now decided to take into more of visual approach on educational issues. And if we are to tap into it, it's less cumbersome, less tasking, cost-effective, and more proactive. Now, let us narrow down to the secondary school level. You will agree with me that in our client, people between the ages of 14, 15 to 18, 20, who are in the secondary school, just exiting the secondary school, are already having Android, and a lot is going on in that direction. The school curriculum is now being challenged, it's not being channeled to fit into visual learning, and they are actually really keen into it. But I'm looking at the challenges too, because it has its disadvantages. A lot of information is flooding in from the social media, and unfortunately, the students, the teenagers are flocking with the wrong information than the right information. And so, in the area of education, the government and the institutions of government and the private sector must create an enabling environment for information verification, academic information verification as well. Academic information verification, not just news information verification, academic information verification. Because works or students are to carry out assignments online, and somebody will be looking at an American school of thought or an American definition of a subject matter, and another person is looking at the North Korean theory or school of thought. So proper harmonization of such information is very critical, or else we're going to have more challenges. Secondly, the e-learning process, which has been thrown more because of the COVID-19, needs to be taken down to the parents through the institution of government. The question is why? Before now, parents support their children in carrying out assignments. In the evenings, they sit down, they do arithmetic, they do mathematics, geography, and all sorts. Parents use the academic structure of their students to sometimes refresh themselves. But you also agree with me that parents are not tuned enough to cope with the advancement of e-learning process. So there's a need for a kind of retooling of the parent class, and that can be done through the institutions of government. Now, the civil society organizations, critically, who are the I call them the gold masters, or they are the goalposts to drive certain processes, because they act as checks and balances in the institutions of government. They monitor government and they set the agenda. There's a need for us to brace up. There's the need for the civil society organization to raise the stakes in entrenching the e-learning process, which has been thrown up more by the COVID-19 protocol, which has come to stay with us. It's irreversible, because there are lots of advantages in the e-learning or the e-exercise, which has been thrown up by the COVID protocol. In governance, it has raised the stakes. In religious pursuits, it has raised the stakes, because it's very clear that you can sit in your house, and if you're a Catholic and you be in mass, it's very clear that you can hear your pastor and get the homily right on your bedroom. It was there before, but with the COVID protocol, it is clear that it's done. Then narrowing down to the subject matter of the day, which is education, the primary school, the secondary school, and the tertiary institution, it is also very clear that a lot can be done, or it's already been done through the e-processes thrown up by COVID. But where we have the challenges is are the institutions of government strong enough to monitor, to advocate, and to serve as the balancing shield for the wrong information. Like I said, there's so much unregulated, uncensored on the internet, and as such, we're already having clusters of information. Sometimes the students will have over information, and most times, or at times, they have under information. So, to a large extent, it has helped the COVID protocol, the COVID-19 has helped in ensuring that the stakes are raised in terms of e-learning. But at the same time, it comes with its own onerous challenges. And that is those are instances where we have weak institutions of government, a gap that the civil society organizations can fill. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Like, this is really eye-opening. Thank you so much, sir. The academic information verification, like, we always talk about it, but I never thought about it in this light as, being a disadvantage, especially now that we're all clamoring towards including tech in our educational systems, because you're actually very correct. Now, how do we differentiate which information is necessary for us and which one is not? And like you said,
let me come in there. Let's start, for example,
okay.
Sorry about that.
No. Please go on, sir.
It's getting very interactive.
Yeah. Yes, please go on.
Let's start with the news. In orientation, we also news managers, and you just get the news from somewhere, and before you know it, it's everywhere. Mm-hmm. So we created a platform for verification or authentication of such news. For example, we have credible media that we can refer to. We just go straight to their website and pick it up. And we'll say, what is Channels Television saying? What is what's AIT saying? What's Fox News or BBC saying? And other mediums of verification, right? We can easily verify information. For certain class of information, we may have challenges. It only takes time, we verify. But when it comes to academic information, it varies. Like I said, the British definition of photosynthesis is different from the Vietnamese definition of photosynthesis. The definition of, I'm headed somewhere. The definition of possession of nuclear power and what it portends for world peace, what the Americans sees it to be, is different from what certain parts of Asia sees it to be. The usage of marijuana, which we call Igbo here, the definition of what it portends for the general society, when you browse it, what the Jamaicans and some parts of the Caribbean are telling us is different from what my mother has told me here. So we have clusters of information coming in from different angles, to the extent that the teachers themselves may not anchor properly, because the teachers are supposed to be repertoires of knowledge before the students. There are various schools of thoughts at this point. Now, let us look at history. The distortion of history is not done by people from other planets. It's done by man, vis-a-vis what they envision, what they see. History comes from oral tradition, dug-up history, or for what you read up. But that same history are subjects of distortions at some points. What's the history of Black Africa may not be what the other man is talking about it somewhere in New Jersey or in the Caribbean. What I'm trying to say is that the clusters of information that we have in educational issues requires a cohesive verification, and that's a major challenge. And unfortunately, our students voyage into it boundlessly. They have this information. And sometimes it is very, very difficult to manage. Those are areas where, like I said, the civil society organizations must come down, sit together, synergize, and come up with a working strategy, workable, practicable strategy for us to have cohesion on such information. In the end of the news, yes, because we can verify. News, most time news is a one-off thing. Breaking news, just one-off. But information of academics is inherent. It's just there. And because it stays more, it is always subject to infiltration from here and there. Some right, others wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I mean, this is an area that I believe my organization will be willing to, partner to work with your agency, because but I like to state before now, yes, there was the internet, but I mean, things were not this rampant. We still had curriculums, that we work with. How about teachers coming together, the ministries, of education coming together to actually put the information or the details of the curriculum online. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is a school administrator in a private school in Warri, and she was talking about how she was trying to encourage the school to, instead of writing lesson notes like we already know, writing lesson notes every week to be submitted, for approval and all. Why not we have these things online, submit to the school's email address, and then whoever is in charge goes through, makes correction, and then the other people take it up. But she mentioned that what they do now is that they buy, there's a platform where they buy e-lesson notes. So I was concerned about the curriculum, just like you're saying, that the curriculum of wherever you buy this might be different from what you have in Delta State, might be different from what is obtainable even in Nigeria, speaking generally. So, but what is the school doing? I believe that's an area that we can come in. The teachers, the students, the teachers rather, the Ministry of Education should be able to come together to say, let us upload the curriculum for Delta State or for social level of education online, such that when students go, they know exactly where to go get their information from. So whatever they're getting from other sources can just be an added knowledge, and for them to know how to be able to tailor down. Yes, I feel that is something that can actually work and save us.
Your organization is quite it's a fantastic one. I've gone through your processes online, and I've interacted with you. I've seen the zeal, I've seen the strength, I can observe the capacity. We don't need to do so much for one to be able to make deductive impressions that you are well cut out to deliver. On this, there is a challenge. I made this observation myself that we are going to break it down into 4 different categories to get a solution. One, the platforms where they are buying lesson notes already is on. Mm-hmm. In big private schools in Lagos and Port Harcourt and elsewhere, they don't go with notebooks to class anymore. They come with iPad. They come with iPad to the class. That's the children of the rich. They have power, and their parents can afford those schools, and sometimes they can afford to even pay and buy these lesson notes added to the ones they've been given from their schools. That's for the elites. The government schools are there. Then the rural axis of Obiaruku, Umukwata, Ebele, Eziono. Those ones, they do hear about it. They don't have the means to get an iPad. And for those few that got an iPad, they may not have the power. They may not have power to power it. So it's a challenge.
I completely agree with you, sir. Yes, sir.
Are we there?
Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you.
Hello? Oh my God.
Yes, I can hear you.
What? Yeah, you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
So in those schools where we have, those areas where we have people who cannot afford those iPads, that is not tenable. But in the urban areas where we have people who can afford the iPad, who can guide the data, sometimes they have the Wi-Fi in their school, it's obtainable. So we need to stratify. There's a need to stratify between rural institutions and urban institutions. Because in urban institutions, even where they don't have the iPad or where they don't have the means, they can create the Wi-Fi, especially in private institutions. So this model of buying online may not work in rural areas effectively. Yes, and in the urban areas where it works, because the society is changing by the day. Remember, I said the new normal is already here. The new normal is already here with us. So there's a need for us now to stratify so that the civil society organizations will be able to have their target. Those that are dealing with students in the urban axis will get the rules of engagement and engage them effectively. Those that are dealing with students or people from the rural axis also create a model to engage them as well effectively. But one thing is clear, both in the rural and the urban axis, we can say 50% of those in the rural axis still have Android, but they may not be able to subscribe. So to a large extent, we grade them like those who are disadvantaged in terms of defense of the facility. But those in the urban axis have this opportunity. They have these gadgets. They even have it in their schools. They have computer laboratories in their schools where
I was coming to that.
They voyage without regulation into the internet, and they just download anything and everything. So it requires the state government, if I have to suggest, the state institutions to synergize with the CSOs in partnership with the Ministry for Basic and Secondary Education to streamline curriculum, those online and those that are physical, those that we can have practical, so that we can come up with an acceptable, workable, and practicable policy. Because you can just it's a little bit cumbersome, and that's where you're into the conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I agree with you. You know, there was an area I was going to point out, which you already mentioned, but it will also lead us to another problem that you earlier mentioned. Now, I remember when I was in school, I schooled in Warri. I mean, I remember we had labs, like computer labs, although they were not always functional. But how about the government making provision for computers or laptops that can be used, you know, during school, maybe when it's time for students to access information online, maybe 2 students can have access to one system or 3 students, you know, just like that. But another thing will be protection for this, because we know the kind of environments that we're in. Government cannot invest so much, and then maybe at the end of the day, we're hearing stories of those facilities being boggled and the laptops being stolen. So I think that's where the orientation also needs to, in fact, you're correct. Orientation never really ends. People, if we're going to toe this line, then there should be some form of orientation to make people understand that these resources, these laptops or these systems that the government
The
is making,
facilities, the schools.
yes, that it is actually
the
for you.
fixtures and the chattels.
Yes, you don't need to steal them. You don't need to boggle them. They're for your own good, and all. So it's, in fact, if we look at it like this, it seems impossible. But I believe that we can start from somewhere, you know, and just take it one day at a time. Trev, do you have anything to say before we go on?
No, I think it's an interesting discussion. I think that just simply one, it may be good to, if the government is not able to provide resources, look into entities that may be able to provide those resources. For example, Microsoft for Education has an office in Nairobi, and I know that they do some of those partnerships. I'm not sure if they would be open to doing something in Nigeria, but it's just an example that it exists already, and it exists in Africa already. And so they have an office there, and they partner with different universities, and they provide discounts for students who want to purchase computers and laptops and tablets. And then also they also have a like a rental program where people can sort of put down dates and times that they need a laptop or a tablet, and then they can sort of, it's like a library, you can sort of check it out and then return it back. So maybe something like that can happen in Nigeria. I'm sure that will take a lot of maybe staffing to sort of manage and monitor all of that. But that's just one possibility. I think another possibility, which I'm learning so much on this call, I didn't even know people were doing courses on WhatsApp. I think there should be more training and case studies around how to utilize those tools. Everybody knows that even in rural areas, people may not have all the resources that they need, but young people have smartphones. As Bar said, they have access to Android. They may not have an iPad, but most young people, no matter where they are in the world, have some sort of smartphone, and that's an easier solution to take forward than the access to computers, is to train these teachers to utilize platforms like WhatsApp in the best capacity, or even Telegram. Telegram is a great messaging platform that allows you to set up informational bots where you can ask a question, a young person can respond, and then they can give them sort of multiple choice questions and all of that. And so I think providing training, better digital training in some of these messaging platforms would be great. And finding case studies of other places around the world where people are doing this, great. I'm sure that, it's the first time I'm hearing it, but I'm sure it happens in other places. It's probably happening in Brazil, in India, and in other places. And so I think finding, what other people are doing and how it works best, and then using that as a model for how you can enhance education and messaging platforms in Nigeria.
Okay, so something just came to mind. I mentioned that I was one of the youth speakers at the Delta State Youth Parliament International Day of Education program. And I remember while I was preparing for that program, I read about some innovations that a couple of countries, put in place to cater for the rural communities. So for people who don't have access to internet in Nigeria, I don't know whether Trev can relate, those phones that are not Android phones, we call them touchlight phones, those small, we call them touchlight phones.
Where you can do like text messaging and stuff.
Exactly,
yeah.
And just make calls. And they utilize this USSD codes. So there are codes that people use to be able to call, to send messages. I think even U reports utilizes that as well, where like information can be sent, since they cannot access the internet, they can get through USSD codes, which you do not require data, or all you just require is network to be able to take calls and receive text messages. So it comes into their phones like text messages, and they're able to access this. But somewhere in my mind, I'm thinking, how much information can be sent through that means? And another thing was, they also created toll-free lines. So maybe a parent or a teacher teaching maybe a small group of students in a community, community will be too large, say a compound or a settlement, because of the COVID pandemic, can make calls through to the commission, the education commission, to ask questions about the curriculum. Okay, so what should I teach the students at this time? What should I not teach them? Toll-free line. So the problem of, I don't have I don't have a credits, airtime will not be there. As long as you are calling that line, it is free of charge. So I don't know. I think these are some things that we can also utilize. Sir, I completely agree with you on what's going on in Obiarako. I left Obiarako a few years ago, but I still visit. My parents are still there. But I can tell you that whether we know it or not, some of these communities are also growing. They're growing gradually. I mean, the way things are right now in Obiarako, it was not the way it was when I started my project some years ago. So sometimes when I go home visiting, it feels like I'm in a new place entirely. So I think some of these changes that are coming in gradually, we can take advantage of them as well, to ensure that people who require this help, who need the needed impacts, can actually get them. So if you do not have any comments for this anymore, I'm going to ask one last question. Another thing I discovered when I was invited to speak, on the International Day of Education, was that I didn't even know before now that before then, I didn't know that some tertiary institutions in Delta states, like polytechnics and campuses, some campuses of major universities were to be turned, and colleges of education were to be turned into full-blown universities. And I remember that there were, from the conversation that, from what I learned from that conversation, was that some people were not very happy with it because they felt, well, this community or this local government already has a university or a tertiary institution there. Why can't it be brought over to us? You know, and I remember it was causing a lot of uproar and all. I'm also aware that some of the schools, as at this time, have already been turned into universities. I'd like to know, what is your take, on it? And what's your opinion? How do you think the government was able to go around this problem? And do you think it's in the best interest of the state, that these polytechnics and colleges of education are being turned into full-blown universities?
Well, thank you very much. Before the institutions were turned into full-blown universities, the government looked at the needs assessment of the people. The government was able to look at and review the academic prospects of the state vis-a-vis its population. It also looked at it vis-a-vis its human capacity, and then the facilities there present. Uzoro Polytechnic is a great institution. It has a lot of facilities in the area of engineering, sports, and other science-oriented institutes, science-oriented facilities. The College of Education, Agbo, was having less than 50 students across board because the NCE was no longer fashionable. The NCE certificate, National Certificate of Education, was no longer fashionable. And we have backlog of Deltans, Nigerians, trying to enter into the Delta State University, which is very, very tight. The Delta State University, Anwai campus, has always been a university, but without the required facility. So what did the government do? The government said, okay, we have these facilities in some areas, in some schools, we need to develop the facilities. We already have the manpower in terms of lecturing and the halls and others that it takes to run the university. And moreover, what people are looking at is that they look at universities from the physical architectural structure. No, it has departed. We are coming into a globalized world already. We've moved into a globalized scenario where a lot can be done in just one single office, especially in the process of e-learning. So the Delta State government took the bull by the horn, reviewed the population of students in Delta State, reviewed the youth population, reviewed the facilities on ground, and created the 3 tertiary institutions: University of Science and Technology, Uzoro, Delta State University, Agbo, and University of Technology, Anwai. So now, Denis Osadebe University. Now, let us take a step further. A couple of days ago, the governor personally visited the schools to assess the facilities, having gotten the requirements from the Nigerian University Commission. Because before the license was given, the Nigerian University Commission was on ground to review the status quo. Having reviewed the status quo in amidst the facilities, in terms of human capacity, the physical structures, the technical know-how, and the committee set up by the state government. This committee is set up by the state government. Is set up a committee to look at the creation and the implementation of SAVE. And today, the universities are gradually being turned into the various institutions like the polytechnics, the Anwai campus, and the College of Education Agbo are now being converted into full-blown universities. The government is already making the funding available. Funding in the area of human capacity, employment of the lecturers, academic and non-academic staff, adequately and sufficiently, creating the enabling environment for research. So if you ask my opinion, as a government personnel and as an individual, I think it's a good leap by the state government, because only about 20% of debtors that applied to universities across Nigeria get the admission, and less than 30% of debtors that apply into Delta State University get admitted into our universities. So it's a partnership between the critical stakeholders and the government itself. So I think it's quite fantastic. It's up to now the level where we are now is creating the enabling environment of sustainability of government legacy. What is the legacy? The legacy is the institution. Remember, the College of Education Agbo has been there over time. Delta State University, Abraka, had been before now College of Education, Benedicta State. It has been a college. It was a College of Education before its conversion. And I think it is well and evenly distributed in the sense that we know the population base, the youth population base of Delta. For example, Uzoro is highly populated, it's densely populated in terms of students. And then the Delta State University, the one in Agbo now, is not having the needed population. This is because what the award is Nigerian NCE, National Certificate of Education, which it's not in patronage because a lot of persons are not interested in going through the rigors of 3 years and coming up with an NCE because of the inherent discrimination that goes with it. So I think that policy of government of the conversion to universities is a welcome development, and it requires the cooperation of all and sundry to support the efforts of government, both from that of the students, the critical stakeholders, the lecturers, the government itself, and the entire people of the state by extension. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Like I've also learned again to knowing the new names of the schools now. I graduated from Delta State University, Abraka, and I can tell you the rush. Like as at 2011, when I left secondary school and made an application, it was tug of war to get in, even after I reached the cutoff mark. Like, but just because I put it as both first and second choice. I mean, my second choice course, which I ended up studying pharmacy, it was trouble to get it, even when I exceeded the cutoff mark. Because of this segmentation of saying, oh, 20% of people in this
It's called a
faculty or in
quota
this
system. A lot of
quota,
debtors were
exactly.
not given the opportunity to go to school. It's still happening now. It's still happening now.
It was
and
tough.
that's repugnant to natural justice.
That was almost 10 years ago when I got into school, and then I can imagine what it is now. It was something else. My father had to intervene. Even like I already met the cutoff. Why can't my daughter's school, even being him being a staff, it took a lot before they eventually accepted me to study. So I can imagine what it is now, 10 years after. Thank you so much, sir. I mean, I can say now that I've been properly oriented on this. Thank you so much. Trev, do you have any more questions or anything for us? It seems Hilary is not able to join us today, and probably we can engage him in the much bigger session. I believe he will have a lot to say as well, because he has quite a
Hilary,
lot.
the principal
Yes, he
secretary to
couldn't
the
make
governor.
it. No. This Hilary is from Cameroon. Hilary Ngide. I hope I'm pronouncing
Right.
his name properly.
Right.
He has worked with UNESCO and a number of the UN organizations. So he has quite vast experience as well, just like you. So we're hoping that he will share with us more on the global view about the UNESCO budget recommendation and what the United Nations is doing to ensure that people, especially at the grassroots level, have access to quality education.
Yeah, you know, disappointing we weren't able to have him today, but as you said, Benedicta, we will try to engage him in a later session. I didn't have any other comments or questions for Bar. I think that he shared a significant amount of knowledge on education in Nigeria and what's happening in the Delta State, and basically what his bureau is doing to sensitize and bring awareness to multiple types of issues, and how the bureau is connected to many thematic issues happening in Nigeria. And so just want to thank you again for taking the time to join us. I know you're such a busy person, and you have a lot going on. And so taking the time to join us today, I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today's session. I will certainly share out the video for everyone who joined today and all of the people who registered. And it'll also go on our website under our webinar catalog, which will be going live in a couple of days. We'll have that up. So yeah, that's it. Thank you everyone for joining the session today.
Thank you so much, Trev. Thank you, Barrister.
Thank you very, very
I really
much.
appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
All right, have a good
thank you very much.
day.
I look forward to
Good night.
more opportunities for this kind of synergy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely, sir. Definitely. Oh, Evelyn, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Benedicta, Apuamah, for your NGO, for the great things you're doing. Thank you for the depth. Thank you for the knowledge. Thank you for the sacrifice. And most importantly, thank you for the energy. We appreciate you. We hope and pray for more partnership as we make progress, both local and national, international. And we're sure that you're going to remain thoughtful for the benefit of mankind. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I will definitely follow up this conversation offline, backstage. Thank you, sir.